Triple play, we're making a triple plays. This is the Triple Play Fantasy Basketball Show, proud member of Empire Media, hosting Coach James Lewis. That's myself. Getting married in 2 weeks, people. The countdown has begun. We are again joined by the squad of two men living completely different lives, but still loving the game of basketball. Varsity head coach and summer school teacher, Kevin Coleman. You can find him at @theboys_22. What's up, Kev?
Hey man, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk a little bit basketball, and I'm really looking at Eric right now in this thing, and like me, like 10 years ago, like that was me. So he has a bright future ahead of him as long as he can just follow my path.
And you heard it. We introed him in. Eric, the Dr. Mendelson, master of co-ed kickball. What's up, E?
I just think Kevin's life is boring now. Like, he has kids, he has a job, like he lives on his
structure.
On his Friday night, you know, he gets dinner with his daughter, and that's really cute. But like, his days of his wild like times are over. He's living vicariously through me, and that's fine.
Man, I love this pod. It gets me in touch with just the things that we really do appreciate in life. So we can all learn from each other. In today's Triple Play Fantasy Basketball podcast, we argue about the Eastern and Western Conference champion picks. Cardiac Kemba finds a new home in Oklahoma City. Coaches having a lot of mutual agreements, like Rick Carlisle, Scottie Brooks, Stan Van Gundy, just to name a few, that are going to different places. And some people getting their own chance. Emi Udoka, Hall of Fame point guard Jason Kidd, and should be Hall of Fame point guard Chauncey Billups. I mean, if they're letting Tony Kukoc in, let's get our guy Chauncey Billups in. Like, what is up with that? I want to hear you guys take. Some of these foreign-born players, I don't know if they necessarily deserve the nod. We got Marshallonis and now Tony Kukoc. They were, all right when they were in the NBA, but nothing screamed like Hall of Famer. What do you guys think about that? Am I going too harsh on the foreign-borns?
I mean, you got to have equality. You can't just have the Hall of Fame be of like U.S.-born players. Like we're seeing more and more international players, but you have to reward the people that played before, even if they didn't put up the stats, just because of the impact they have on the game and kind of being pioneers for future players.
I mean, I will say the Basketball Hall of Fame is the most overrated Hall of Fame in sports. Everybody can get into that thing. It feels like if
all of really good.
If you get a silver medal in the Olympics in 1998, like, you have a shot. Like, there's not like a high bar of like basketball. But I agree. Like, I agree with Eric, I guess. But I will say it's overrated. Like,
you know what? We're less than 4 minutes in, and Kevin already has his first boomer take.
Well, that's not a boomer take. That is a legit take.
Everybody gets into the Hall of Fame. Like, you could average 2 points a game for 10 seasons in a row, and you make it. That's what you sound like.
Okay. You know what? You guys talk, because I'm going to look at the worst player in the NBA Hall of Fame right now, and I guarantee you, God, like, come on.
Don't say Adrian Dantley.
We make a bar for at least I can kind of see an imaginary bar of like, okay, this is bad. Like Mitch Richmond, to me, he made the Hall of Fame, and I was like, yeah, he was really good. He was good, but at what point was he even a top 10 player in the NBA? I know he played defense, both ends, but I mean, the guy never won a championship. He never was a major piece of that puzzle. And then now with Tony Kukoc, my whole mind is like blown. The guy didn't even start on his 3 championship teams. He averaged 13 points a game. Like, good player and all. Anyways, I mean, we digress.
Is it Vlade in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, Vlade's in the Hall too.
Yeah,
like I said,
Marshallonis
he played for the Warriors, where Mitch Richmond was on as well, and he was a bench player, and he was just like,
yeah,
all right,
trash.
Yeah, basically is what I'm saying. It's like, well, come on, let's be fair about things. All right, our first offseason trade was made. Kemba Walker in the number 16 pick. Yes, Oklahoma City got another first-round pick. So that totals 18 in the next 5 years for Al Horford, who returns back to Boston, and Moses Brown in a second rounder. Eric, what's your thoughts on this trade? Winners of the trade and implications for both teams?
So I think it's very interesting that Al Horford goes back to Boston, and I know it's to match salary, but when they tried getting Drew Holiday to replace Kemba, that basically signaled the end of that. And as much as I hate Boston giving up a first-round pick, if they really think that they can have a shot of contention with Tatum and Brown, then you can't have Kemba be the third option. He's just inconsistent at this point in his career. Injuries are starting to catch up. It seems like all he does is shoot 9 threes a game. He's not the facilitator we thought he was. So I think Moses Brown has some upside. They probably weren't going to use that pick anyway. I mean, this is Brad Stevens' first move as a GM, so maybe this is a sign of more things to come. I think the winner, once again, is Oklahoma City in the short run, but we have to see what they do with those picks. Just because you have 18 in the next 5 years doesn't mean that you're going to hit on them.
Kev. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, he's right. I mean, that's so many picks, and even if you do hit on a couple, like you're so youth, your team. That we've looked at this, like this is like super trust the process now. Like we've gotten into like way more trust the process on this one. I don't mind a trade. I don't think that Kemba signing was a failure though. I've been seeing that around a lot. I think he just couldn't stay healthy. I guess you could counter that as saying, well, that is a failure, but that's not really either party's fault. I mean, they did what they had to do. You saw them last year. I mean, the Celtics made it as we watched last year. They probably should have made the finals in the bubble. They were good. And so, you know, I just think that they need to make this move. But it'd be interesting to see how the Celtics kind of rebuild with the cap space that they have or not have. And like that dynamic, can Brown and Tatum coexist together? There's a lot of things that they're going to have to answer, a lot of questions. And I would probably trade one of those, but I know they're probably not going to.
And I like the trade for both parties. Doc's right though; like they got to hit on these picks. They got unlucky this year with the lottery balls dropping. But the future is Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and Kemba not knowing if he's there or not. I mean, you know, perennial All-Star for a couple years there is like you got that in your back mind. Like, is he going to come in? And it just wasn't the greatest of fits. The injuries were unlucky. One reason I like him going to Oklahoma City is they're in the tanking business and they will shut him down. Like there's not going to be the force to like, all right, come back into the lineup. Well, we need you for the playoffs. They're just going to sit him down for the whole year. See what happens in 2023, maybe. Boston, I like the move because one, Al Horford is a good fit with this team. He can really stretch the floor. He's a veteran presence. He was playing really good basketball for Oklahoma City. I'm on my fantasy team, and he was putting up big numbers. So he can still play. He does take care of his body, and he's one of the best professionals that we have. His contract has less years on it than Kemba. So I think they're just trying to free up some money so that way they can address some free agency going forward. So they're getting ahead of the curve. I think Kemba's deal has 3 years on it. I think Horford's has 1. All I know is it has less years, and it should open up the banks a little bit, and that's why I like the trade for both people. And who knows, the Thunder's probably going to get some foreigner that we don't know about at pick 18, and it may work out. Who knows?
He'll make the Hall of Fame.
And if he averages 11 for 3 seasons, he'll make the Hall. Oh, that's hilarious. All right. Let's talk about the hottest topic in the playoffs, and that is Kevin Durant and Scottie Pippen are beefing. All right. We're going to talk about whose side you're taking. Scottie Pippen, just to go over some of the quotes. This is on Kevin Durant. Has he surpassed LeBron? Nah. He tried to beat the Milwaukee Bucks instead of utilizing his team. LeBron James would have figured out how to beat them. KD is a shooter, a scorer, but he doesn't have what LeBron has. KD in return. Didn't the great Scottie Pippen refuse to go in for the game for the last second shot because he was in his feelings? His coach drew up a play for a better shooter. All right. Who you got? Kev, whose side are you on?
I mean, Kevin Durant won with that last quote because I think that's hilarious. I mean, there's nothing Scottie Pippen can say. Like, there's nothing he can do about that. Like, when we talk about, hey, you didn't go in the game. Everybody saw it, especially last year with the documentary about Jordan and the Bulls. Like, everybody it blew it up again. But I will say, Kevin Durant is the millennial athlete. Like, he gets in his feelings a lot. He responds a lot on Twitter. he is an interesting athlete to cover. As a psychology teacher, it's interesting to watch him and like how he kind of persuades himself, because he doesn't care what people think, but he also cares what people think. Like, it's a weird dynamic with him.
Jalen Rose called him the people's champ. I don't know. I know the people hate him too.
Yeah, Jalen, go get 81 put on you by Kobe again. I just think that I think that
that's so unnecessary.
I don't like Jalen Rose, but I will say, I think that Kevin Durant has some issues, and I think he's in his feelings too, because people are always going to say that he couldn't win those rings without the help that he had, and with Golden State, what he did. Like, I think that that's going to be a constant thing in him. And I think with these kids and these athletes, kind of where they're at right now, I think they care about that kind of stuff. But KD won this argument with that quote.
I think Scottie Pippen is a little bit out of touch. Some of the things that he says is wild. I know Paul Pierce kind of does the same thing, and like, okay, yeah, you're Hall of Famers and you're great players, but sometimes they just seem out of touch with things. And I'm curious to hear Doc's take. Who you got?
I mean, they're both right. Like, Scottie Pippen is right that I think, as great as Kevin Durant is, he's never been the Batman on a winning team. He's always been a Robin, or, 1B to, Steph Curry's 1A. Same with Scottie Pippen. He was the Robin to MJ's Batman. But, KD did end him. I just think it's funny. Like, I'm not a LeBron fan as a player, but he gets so much flack from the media, and he's a really good human being. But I feel like we don't criticize Kevin Durant nearly as much as we should. Like, he has burner accounts. He literally, anytime anybody insults him, will go back. Like, that's not really a good role model. Like, it's something where we find entertaining, but for people that look up to him, and it's like, oh, I don't know how to take criticism. I'm a top athlete in the world. He could just be the bigger person and not say anything. He always feels the need to clap back. He did win this argument, but I just think, once again, this looks really bad for KD. Like, literally last month, he's telling Michael Rappaport that he's gonna bang his wife in front of him. He just needs to stop, because I think this is gonna hurt his image. He's gonna do something really bad one day that's gonna be really tough to recover from.
And he doesn't care. And really, we can all see it that he is the second best player in the world. You guys can argue whatever you want, but LeBron James is still the reigning Finals MVP. And after that Game 5 performance, to me, which was probably Kevin Durant's greatest performance to date, everyone was ready to give him the crown and say he is our best player in the league. Then, 2 games later, they lose Game 6. They lose Game 7 on their home court. And Kevin Durant airballs at the buzzer. He goes 0 for 6 in the overtime period, which, he was spectacular. He had 48 points. He was amazing, but when it counted, he didn't do it. So I think with that, we need to take a step back as far as rewarding him that until he does get back into the championship, win one. And with the Nets, it's going to be a different situation. He was the best player on that Warriors team. I know it was Steph Curry's team, and he walked into a 73-win team, but he was really, really damn good. It's hard to judge his legacy, because we think of him, or at least I think of him as potentially this is a top 10 player of all time, and he could even be higher. But it's hard to kind of rate it, because he went to the Warriors and he didn't just stick with OKC, and now he's on his super team. He's got to win more. He's also got the injuries. But Team USA, he just loves basketball. He's going to get back out there, and I think he's going to lead Team USA to a gold, and that's going to be another feather on the cap. So it's interesting, but yeah, dude, grow up. You don't need to get in a fight with every single person and going back and forth with Scottie Pippen. I bet he's in the DMs oh, what happened with your wife? I guarantee KD is doing some undercover Bama-ness. But we're going to move on and get past the appetizer and get straight to the medium rare porterhouse. That is NBA Conference Championship playoff talks. Who you got? We're mid. We're kind of in between the games, and we're going to start with the Western Conference. And the 4-seeded Clippers are playing the 2-seeded Suns. Suns take Game 1 behind Devin Booker's 40-point triple-double. Gets saved by Paul George. 2 missed free throws, leading to DeAndre Ayton's valley oop in Game 2. And the PG-13 takes over Game 3, dominates at home with a masked D-Book, a rusty CP3. Who you guys got, and what do you think about how this series is playing out? Let's start with Kev.
Yeah, I think that it just comes down to, can CP3 kind of get that rust off after the COVID stuff, and Booker come back from that face injury. And I still think the Suns are the favorites because I just don't trust Paul George. So I'm going to continue to not trust Paul George. I'm going to go with that. But I do want to shout out that Patrick Beverley is a pain in the ass. Like if I played against Patrick Beverley, I might beat his ass on the court. Like, he drives me nuts when I watch him play. He has no physical basketball skill. All that dude does is just hound people and just is a nuisance. And he drives me nuts. The Clippers are my least favorite team left in this playoffs, so I want to see them lose.
Me too. Doc?
I have the Suns in 6. First of all, they have home court advantage. They don't look like they can be beat at home. Like, I know it came down to the final possession, game 2, but they were dominating for most of that game. Paul George got extremely hot, and the Suns had a little bit of a mental meltdown. Can I just say that I hate technology and instant replay? Like, the last minute of the game, and I probably sound like Kevin saying this, the last minute of the game took 10 minutes. Yeah, it took 10 minutes. And if you think about it, like, them looking at the instant replay gave the Suns the opportunity to draw up that play.
Free timeout.
Yeah, it's a free timeout, and it's just like that's literally the difference between the Clippers winning the game and then losing it on that last second. Obviously, if Paul George hits his free throws, it's a different story, but we're going off the narrative of the instant replay. Even though D-Book is masked and CP3 is rusty, once again, I think they just have so much depth. They play with so much energy. It's just going to be really tough to beat them. They're already up 2-1. I think if they can steal a game in LA, it'll be over.
Yeah. And I think you picked the game that they're going to steal is game 6 because it would be on the road. It's crazy. The Clippers have been masters at the adjustments, and you got to tip your hat to the Coach Lue on that. They've lost the first 2 games of all 3 of these matchups that they've had so far, and they've come back and they've won all those series. I think that it's all dependent, like the Clippers' future is all dependent on if Kawhi Leonard comes back. Without him coming back, I don't see them having enough firepower. Currently, I have the Suns in 7, so I still have, a little bit of hope for the Clippers, but I just think this is going to be CP3's shining moment and at home game 7. I don't see them losing at home either, and so I don't know what that means as far as they're already up 2-1, but I guess they won the first 2 games at home. Yeah, I just see the home team winning, them coming back in game 7, and I think the whole NBA community is kind of rooting for this team, but they do have the best home court advantage in basketball. You got to love Mikal Bridges. You got to love what Jay Crowder's bringing to the floor. And Campaign has done a great job in off the bench or even starting for CP3, but I think he shakes off the rust. I mean, you're not doing anything for 11 days coming off COVID. You kind of expect that, but you didn't expect it from D-Book, and with the mask that clearly was messing with him. And he's talked to Rip Hamilton about how to play with the mask, and maybe he taps into his inner Kobe, as everyone's comparing him to these days, going forward.
Hold on. I got a question for Doc, because I actually do kind of respect his basketball opinion.
Oh, no, this just in.
That is the only
Kev,
only compliment that
I'm not
gonna
used to
give him.
this. I'm not used to
Holy
this.
moly.
Are you drunk?
I could be having some Baileys in my coffee, but I will say this: I was on another pod, and they were talking about basketball, and they were talking about Tyronn Lue, and they were talking about how Lue is a very good coach. I've always been on kind of the other side where I think that he's had the talent and he has that, but like James talked about with the adjustments and stuff, do you think Lue is a good coach, and do you think he's done a good job with adjustments throughout his career, or do you think it's more talent?
I think it's a mix of both. Like, you can't deny that he had a Cleveland Cavaliers team that with David Blatt made it to the finals the year before, and they got a little bit lucky with the Draymond Green suspension. I think that kind of changes the narrative a little bit. But I mean, first of all, Doc Rivers, they blew a 3-1 lead in the second round last year, couldn't even get to the conference finals. So the talent has been there for the Clippers in years past, and in Ty Lue's first year here, this is how they've gotten further than any year with Doc Rivers, with the CP3 era, or with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. The fact that they won a game without Kawhi, I think everybody counted them out. He is very good at adjustments, and I think he's letting them play a little bit more free. We're seeing Paul George doing a lot more isolation. It's been working, though, but I think when he sees that it doesn't, that's when He's not afraid. I mean, they were even going to a little bit of zone this series, which you don't really see too much in the NBA now.
Yeah.
I think he's one of his great qualities as a coach is he's a master at the right lineups and the right players playing. Reggie Jackson has been spectacular this playoffs, and that's a hard decision to make when you have Pat Beverly and you have Rajon Rondo, like who you're going to go with. And he's decided to put Reggie Jackson in the forefront of that lineup, and he's stepped up and played really well to a guy that's really been a very inefficient shooter his entire career, is playing some really good basketball.
And I think this is an underrated point. Players want to play for him. Like,
yeah.
And we look at the Hawks when we look at the Hawks this year when they had Lloyd Pierce, and Lloyd Pierce literally threw Trae Young under the bus for that foul, for like trying to draw fouls and ruining the game. And then Nate McMillan comes in and is like, "Hey, this is your offense, take over." And now the Hawks are tied 1-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and the players look motivated. I think same with Ty Lue. You hear great things about him. People really respect how much time and effort he puts in. So I think that's an underrated point that people don't really talk about.
Yeah, in the doc in PG-13 relationship has been documented that it was sour. It was really bad, and you saw the type of performances he was doing last year in the playoffs, and he's looked like a completely different playoff P this year. And I think a lot of that has to do with your head coach believing you and putting you in the right spots and just empowering you. And we've seen, like you just pointed out, Nate McMillan empowering Trae Young and vice versa in that entire Atlanta Hawks team. So we're going to move on, unless you guys have something else to chime in on. We're going to move on to that matchup, and that is the 5-seeded Atlanta Hawks behind the feisty, fiery fireball that is Ice Trae Young, matched up with the 3-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, now are probably the favorite to cut down the Nets. We saw the Hawks take game one. They've won game one on the road in every single series. Shout out to them because that's just incredible. It's only been done by, I think, 3 other teams in NBA history. Bucks blow out the Hawks in game number 2, locking it up, but Atlanta technically stole home court. In this one, who you got for the Eastern Conference Championship? Doc Mendelson.
I said Bucks in 5 before the series starts, and I have to stick with it. Trae Young is really good, and believe me, I have been a Hawks fan this entire year. I don't want to say the offense is gimmicky, but it's a little gimmicky. And I think if you can figure it out, like the offense runs through Trae Young, like he's a shooter, he's the distributor. If you get the ball out of his hands, nobody on the team, I mean, we saw Kevin Huerter have that amazing game 7, but I don't think anybody on that team can consistently create their own shot. There's a lot of people, Danilo Gallinari, Bogdanovich, Kevin Huerter, that depend on the high pick and roll and Trae Young to get them the ball for open shots. Clint Capella is once again a pick and roll kind of guy. I think John Collins is the only other guy that can really create his own shot. So I think if you stop Trae Young, if you body him up a little bit, maybe if you put a longer defender like Middleton or Giannis on him, or even trap him up when he gets after half court, that really slows down Atlanta's offense, and I don't think they have the playmakers to overcome it.
So you don't see Atlanta winning another game?
Nah.
Kev?
I think they got a little exposed last night in the game that we watched. I think when you saw kind of what happens with the thing is Milwaukee is going to do a very good job of kind of shutting down, I think, Trae better than what Philadelphia was able to do. And I think that they have those long athletes. They have that ability to kind of defend. And you can't take it away that Milwaukee, you know, they came out of that series with the Nets emotionally drained. So that first game, you saw what happened, and the Hawks were ready to go. That's one of those games that you just I don't think the first game is what you need to look at to see, okay, how's this game going to look? How's this series going to play out? I think that second game is more to the median. And then, okay, now let's see if the Hawks can rebound. But man, Trae Young is freaking good, and I love watching him play. Like Doc was on that. Like he knows. I had my concerns about Trae because of his maturity and stuff, but that dude's just balling, and I love how he just plays the crowd and he just says "F you." Like I've loved him this whole playoffs. Like he's probably been my favorite athlete this whole playoffs.
Why couldn't he do this in the regular season? If he had won MVP, I would have won like $3,000.
Oh, there's Doc. There's the Doc we know.
There we go. Betting Doc Mendelson.
And he's like the people's champ of heart. Like he is a complete showman. I think the shimmy, he did shake Drew Holiday out of his boots on that play, and just took his time. And the 48 11-7. It just is absolutely incredible. I think that the fireball gets one more, but I see this over in 6 in Milwaukee's favor. I think yesterday showed a lot. I think Drew Holiday showed a lot defensively against Trey yesterday and really had a focus of I'm going to put him on shackles, whereas in game 1, he's kind of going heads up with him. I think he had 33, 34 points, and yesterday he kind of took the onus of I'm going to take this to a whole different defensive level. Also, Chris Middleton shot off. I think he was 6 for 23 in game number 1, and then yesterday he kind of came back to normal, and he's been really good. I know, Kev, you don't really like him particularly too much, but I think with Drew Holiday, it opens up a whole different role for him as because he can really get his own shot, but you don't want that happening a lot over time. And Drew Holiday's kind of decision making has been better. But man, you got to tip your hat. Chris Middleton has been really, really good, especially against the Brooklyn Nets when they were down. His game 6 and 7 performances were off the chart. Atlanta got Cam Reddish back yesterday. They kind of sorely need some wing help because Bogdanovich is dealing with a knee issue and he's hobbling around the court. Like, you know, you got to tip your hat that he's soldiering it out, but he's not his normal self. And of course, they lost DeAndre Hunter for the rest of the playoffs. So they're just going to have to lean on Herter to kind of step up a little bit more. John Collins has been impressive on a contract year. I want to kind of go around. What do you guys think about John Collins' playoffs? Because he hasn't been under the lights, and people question whether he's a winning player or not. And he's been able to play with Capella, and it looks like he's due for some money this offseason. Doc, I know you love some John Collins.
Yeah, I mean, he fits perfectly in today's NBA. You could put him at the 3, 4, or 5 because he can shoot the 3 ball. He can rebound. He has an inside presence. He took a gamble on himself by turning down a 4-year, $90 million extension last year. Says, I think I'm a max player. And, you know, I think the further that teams get in the playoffs, the more exposure they get. And, I mean, he's obviously the number 2 option to Trae Young. So good for him. He's going to get paid, probably not by Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, for me, John Collins is max contract Collins now. Like, I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's played his way into it. And, hey, he bet on himself, right? Like, that he did it, and he showed what he deserved. Now, I think the question mark for him is will he be able to take that max contract and live up to it? I think that's the storyline we watch, and will a team be willing to bet on him? But I think there's going to be some teams out there that see his potential and go there. And I've seen a lot of different news. Like, I've seen the Spurs get thrown out. I've seen a lot of different guys.
That was my team before the season started.
The Spurs?
Yeah, I said the Spurs always build around big men. Tim Duncan, when he was gone, LaMarcus Aldridge. Like, John Collins just fits that mold.
I think he does too. And I think that would be kind of that restart, that rebuild. And like when we did the mock draft, if you haven't seen that on YouTube, we talked about getting Bouknight there, having Collins there, Bouknight a scorer. Like, there's a lot of things they could do with Collins as that versatile piece.
I would feel bad. I think because Trae Young and him clearly have such a good relationship. They've kind of grown up in the league together. They have a really good chemistry. Trae Young throws it on the glass wherever John Collins is around. What I've been impressed with John Collins is just defensively, just an effort, just being out there. His ability to hit the 3 is super important. And his physicality on the boards. He's a better rebounder than I ever gave him credit for, and he really attacks the glass. So it would be kind of a shame because it's like they're finally clicking. But there's only so much money, especially when you pay Bogdanovich and Gallinari so much he did last year. So I don't know if they're going to try to rework all of that. I think he's restricted so they can match, but I don't know if they have enough money to whoever's going to throw the bank at him.
It's about that money, Coach.
It is about the money. All right, little plug talk. Wherever you find your podcast, go follow the Triple Play Fantasy franchise. Triple as in our baseball, basketball, and football pods that drop every week. And don't disappoint like Ben Simmons in the fourth quarter of elimination games or at the free throw line. Our Triple Play Fantasy YouTube channel is gaining traction with our subscription. Our goal is to reach 1,000 by Thanksgiving. We would be thankful for that. We got content dropping every day, including Coach's Corner, talking hoops, particularly breaking down the NBA draft prospects. Most recently, Coach Kev and I did a mock draft of our lottery team, as just mentioned. Movie Minute reviews with Brad and Johnny, Super Fantasy Bros with Jacob and Kev. Fantasy 15, sports arguments in 15 minutes or less. Between the Scenes with Marty and Mac, a weekly fantasy baseball show. Monkey Knife Fight picks and fantasy foodies. You just have to tune in. D. Mindy and the crew eat stuff. They chill out. They invite Field Yates for drinks. So it's just kind of a different spin, but great content. Check us out. We got everything you need. We are going to continue to grind and make this podcast the number one pick like Imani Bates in 2023. Check us out on Twitter and IG at @TripPlayFantasy. Most recently, we had number one overall pick, two-time NBA All-Star and current University of Maryland assistant basketball coach, Danny Manning, as an interview. Thanks again from the entire Triple Play Fantasy family for tuning in. Now, time to take a ride on the coaches carousel. Starting with...
I got to dip, y'all.
All right.
I might be able to do something later if y'all want to hop on.
Sounds good.
All right.
Kev, you gonna be around?
Yeah, I'll be around later tonight. So if we have something to do there, we can do it.
Let me know because maybe we can do Kittle versus Waller.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. See y'all later.
I'll let you know.